Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderbolt, watching the endless stars through the main viewing window. The ship moved quietly through space, near the edge of human territory. They had been on patrol for 3 weeks now, checking for pirates and making sure the shipping lanes stayed safe. Jake was 35 years old and had been in the Earth fleet for 15 years. He was tall, with dark hair and serious brown eyes. His crew trusted him because he always made the right choices, even when they were hard ones. Today felt like any other day, until Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez called out from her station. She was the ship's communications officer, a young woman with bright red hair and green eyes. She had been with the Thunderbolt for 2 years and was very good at her job. Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" Amy frowned at her screens. "It's a signal, sir. But it's not like anything in our database. Transmission is coming from very far away, and the pattern is completely unknown." "How far away?" Jake asked. "Kepler 442 system, sir. That's over 1,200 light-years from here." Jake raised his eyebrows. No human ship had ever traveled that far from Earth. "The signal is definitely coming from there, and Commander, there's something else. The signal is repeating every few minutes, like a distress call." It was clearly a voice, but not human. The words were in a language nobody had ever heard before. The voice sounded scared and desperate, like someone begging for help. "Get Dr. Paul Chin up here right away," Jake ordered. Dr. Chin was their language expert, a smart man who could figure out new languages faster than anyone else in the fleet. While they waited, Jake listened to the signal again. Even without understanding the words, he could hear the fear in the alien voice. Someone was in trouble, and they were asking for help. Dr. Chen arrived on the bridge 5 minutes later. He was a thin man with gray hair and thick glasses. He spent his whole life studying languages, and now he was about to hear his first alien one. "Play it again, Amy," Jake said. Dr. Chen listened carefully to the strange sounds. His face was very serious as he worked with his computer to analyze the signal. "This is incredible," he said after a few minutes. "Different from anything on Earth, but there are patterns. Give me some time, and I think I can figure it out." For the next 4 hours, Dr. Chen worked on translating the message. The rest of the crew went about their normal duties, but everyone kept thinking about the alien signal. Finally, Dr. Chen called Jake back to the bridge. "You need to hear this." Jake nodded. "Go ahead," Dr. Chen read from his computer screen. "To anyone who can hear this message, we are the Villani people of the Kepler 442 system. We are dying. An enemy called the Devourers came to our worlds 3 years ago. They eat everything. Eat our cities, our forests, our people. We have tried to fight them, but we are not warriors. We are artists and scientists and farmers. We do not know how to make war." The bridge was completely quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing to listen. Dr. Chen continued. "We have 7 worlds in our system. 2 are already gone. The Devourers took everything and left only empty rock. 5 worlds remain, but we are losing the fight. 30 billion of our people are still alive, but not for long. If anyone receives this message, please help us. We will share everything we know with you. We'll be your friends forever. But please, please help us before it is too late." Jake felt his heart beating fast. They were so far away that no human had ever even seen their star, but they were in terrible danger. "Is there more?" Jake asked. "Yes, sir. They included technical information about their technology and star charts showing their system. They also sent data about the Devourers. These enemies are not normal aliens. They are like machines and animals mixed together. They eat planets and use the materials to build more of themselves." Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke up. "Commander, the signal is still repeating. You're still broadcasting it. People were dying. People who had never hurt anyone, who spent their time making art and studying science. They were being destroyed by monsters, and they had asked for help. Earth fleet rules were very clear. Human ships were not supposed to leave human territory without permission. Going to Kepler 442 would take 6 months each way, and they would be going alone against an enemy they knew nothing about. It was dangerous and against orders. But Jake thought about the voice in the signal. The fear and hope mixed together. The Villani were asking for help because they had nowhere else to turn. "Amy, open a channel to Earth Fleet Command," Jake said. "Priority 1. "Yes, sir." Jake sat down in his captain's chair and took a deep breath. He was about to make a decision that would change everything. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the UES Thunderbolt. I am sending you a translated alien distress call from the Kepler 442 system. 30 billion aliens are under attack by an enemy called the Devourers. I request immediate permission to assemble a rescue fleet and respond to their call for help." Paused, thinking about what else to say. "The Villani people have done nothing wrong. They are peaceful and have asked for our help. I believe it is our duty as human beings to answer their call. I recommend we send our best ships and our best people to help them fight the Devourers." Jake nodded to Amy, who sent the message racing. Toward Earth at faster than light speed. It would take 3 days to reach Earth Fleet Command. And then they would have to wait for an answer. Dr. Chen was still working on the alien message. "Commander, there's something else. The Villani sent information about their technology. They have very advanced medical science and they know how to grow food in space. He wanted to help them because they were scared and alone and had asked for help. That was what humans did. They helped people who needed help. Set course for the Kepler system," Jake ordered. "Best possible speed." Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke first. "Sir, we don't have permission to leave human territory, I know," Jake said. "But by the time we get permission, it might be too late. We'll do long-range scanning and gather intelligence while we wait for orders from Earth." The Thunderbolt changed course and began moving toward the Kepler system. They were still in human space, but they were heading toward the edge and beyond. Jake looked out at the stars and wondered what they would find when they got there. He thought about the Villani people, so far away and so afraid. He thought about the Devourers, eating whole planets. He thought about his crew who were now heading toward the most dangerous mission any human had ever attempted. But mostly, he thought about the simple fact that someone had asked for help. And humans always answered when someone asked for help. That was what made them human. The ship flew on through space, carrying Jake and his crew toward a distant star system where 30 billion aliens waited for salvation. Behind them, a message raced toward Earth, asking for the largest rescue mission in human history. The war for Kepler 442 was about to begin. Admiral Lisa Hayes sat in her office high above the moon, looking down at the huge shipyards where Earth's warships were built. She was 52 years old with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. For 28 years, she had served in Earth Fleet, and now she commanded all of humanity's space forces. The message from Commander Morrison had arrived 3 hours ago. Lisa had read it 5 times, and each time it made her feel the same mix of excitement and worry. And one of her commanders wanted to take Earth's ships across the galaxy to save them. Lisa pressed a button on her desk. "Send word to all Joint Chiefs. Emergency meeting in Conference Room Alpha in 30 minutes. Her assistant, a young man named Carl Brown, nodded from the doorway. "Yes, Admiral. Should I contact the President's office?" "Not yet." To the chiefs first, Lisa walked to her window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were dying. Not humans, but people just the same. They had families and dreams and hopes, just like humans did. The thought of 30 billion of them being destroyed by monsters made her stomach hurt. 30 minutes later, Lisa sat at the head of a long table in Conference Room Alpha. The other Joint Chiefs were there too. General Robert Clark commanded the Earth Army. He was a big man with a gray beard who always worried about everything. Admiral Karen White commanded the Space Marines. She was small and tough and never backed down from a fight. General Frank Davis commanded the Air Force. He was quiet and smart and always thought before he spoke. "You've all read Morrison's message," Lisa said. "What do you think?" General Clark spoke first. "It's impossible. Kepler 442 is over 1,200 light-years away.
Ow.
Even with our fastest ships, it would take 6 months to get there. We'd be sending our people into unknown space to fight an enemy we know nothing about. The Villani sent technical data about the Devourers," Admiral White said. "Our science teams are looking at it now. These things are not normal aliens. They're like machines and living creatures mixed together. They eat planets and turn the materials into more of themselves. General Davis nodded. That's what makes this so dangerous. Normal enemies get weaker when you fight them. Get stronger. Every ship we destroy gives them materials to build two more. Lisa listened to all of this, but her mind kept going back to the voice in the alien message. The fear and hope mixed together is the way they said please over and over again. What about the rewards, she asked. The Volani offered to share their technology with us. Their medical science could save millions of human lives. Their farming methods could end hunger on Earth. General Clark shook his head. That's if we win. If we lose everything. Ships, crews, and maybe the safety of Earth itself. What if these devourers follow our ships back here? The room was quiet for a moment. Then Admiral White spoke. There's something else to think about. This will be our first contact with friendly aliens. How we handle this will set the pattern for everything that comes after. Lisa nodded. That was exactly what she had been thinking. If we help them, other aliens will know that humans can be trusted. If we ignore them, they'll know we only care about ourselves. The meeting went on for 2 hours. The chiefs argued about ships and supplies and the dangers of deep space travel. Lisa could see that they were all thinking the same thing she was. Those 30 billion people needed help, and Earth was the only place that could give it. Finally, Lisa stood up. I'm going to recommend to the president that we send a rescue fleet. We'll assemble the largest task force in human history and go to Kepler 442. General Clark looked worried. Lisa, this could be the end of Earth fleet if we lose all those ships. If we don't go, it will be the end of the Volani, Lisa said. 30 billion people will die because we were too scared to help them. An hour later, Lisa was in the White House, sitting across from President Daniel Martinez. The president was a tall man with kind eyes and gray hair. He had been a teacher before he became president, and he still talked like someone who cared about doing the right thing. Tell me about these aliens, the president said. Lisa opened her files. Call themselves the Volani. They have 7 worlds in the Kepler 442 system, but 2 are already gone. They have 30 billion people left, but they're losing the war against the devourers. What kind of people are they? Peaceful. They used to be warriors long ago, but they gave up war and became artists and scientists. They build beautiful cities and grow amazing food and make art that we can't even imagine. They're everything we hope humanity might become someday. The president was quiet for a moment. And these devourers, monsters. They eat everything living and use it to make more of themselves. They don't talk or make deals. They just consume and grow stronger. President Martinez walked to the window and looked out at the city. How many ships would we need to send? Everything we have. 12 heavy cruisers, 6 battleships, 2 carrier groups, and supply ships. 50,000 people. Total, that's almost our entire fleet. Yes, sir. But if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. Half measures won't work against the devourers. The president was quiet for a long time. Finally, he turned back to Lisa. What do you think we should do? Lisa had been waiting for this question. I think we should go, not because of the technology they're offering, and not because it might help us politically. We should go because it's the right thing to do. Because when someone asks for help, humans help. That's who we are. The president nodded slowly, set up a meeting with the Global Defense Council. I want to hear what the other world leaders think. 2 days later, the Global Defense Council met in emergency session. Representatives from every nation on Earth argued about the mission. Some said it was too dangerous. Others said it was too expensive. A few said that Earth should worry about its own problems first. But Maria Santos from the European coalition stood up and said something. That changed everything. If we don't help the Volani, who will? If we let 30 billion people die when we could save them, what kind of species are we? The vote was close, but it passed. Earth would send a rescue fleet to Kepler-442. President Martinez made the announcement to the world that night. My fellow humans, he said, we have received a call for help from across the galaxy. 30 billion people are dying, and they have asked us to save them. We will not turn away. We will send our best ships and our best people to help them, because that is what humans do. We help those who cannot help themselves. The next morning, Admiral Hayes began the biggest military operation in human history. She called it Task Force Salvation. The fleet would be commanded by Captain Steve Turner, a brave officer who had never lost a battle. His ship, the EU's Valiant, was the most powerful warship humanity had ever built. Captain Turner was 43 years old, with black hair and green eyes. He had been in the fleet for 20 years and was known for being smart and brave. His crew trusted him completely. The Valiant's officers were the best in the fleet. Commander Linda Wright was his tactical officer, a woman who could plan battles better than anyone. Lieutenant Commander Tony Garcia was his chief engineer, a man who could fix anything and make any machine work better. Colonel Jack Murphy commanded. The Marines, soldiers who would fight the Devourers face to face as the fleet prepared to leave. People all over Earth watched the news. Some were scared that the mission would fail. Others were proud that humanity was helping strangers. But everyone knew that something important was happening. Humanity was about to become something new. Captain Turner stood on the bridge of the Valiant and looked out at his fleet. 18 warships and dozens of supply vessels stretched out in formation. 50,000 people were ready to cross the galaxy to help aliens they had never met. All ships report ready for departure, Commander Wright said. Captain Turner nodded. Send a message to the Villani. Tell them we're coming. Tell them to hold on just a little longer. The fleet activated their jump drives and disappeared into hyperspace, beginning the long journey to Kepler 442. Behind them, Earth waited and hoped. Ahead of them, 30 billion aliens waited for salvation. The greatest rescue mission in history had begun. Captain Steve Turner stood on the bridge of the EU's Valiant, watching the stars blur past as the fleet traveled through hyperspace. They had been flying for 3 months now, and they still had 3 more months to go before reaching Kepler 442. The journey was taking longer than any human had ever traveled from Earth. The Valiant was huge, bigger than any ship humanity had ever built. It was 2 miles long and carried 3,000 crew members. Its weapons could destroy whole cities, and its armor could stop almost any attack. But Steve knew that even the Valiant might not be enough against the Devourers. Commander Linda Wright walked up to him with a data pad in her hand. Linda was 38 years old with brown hair and smart gray eyes. She had been planning battles. For 15 years, Anne was the best tactical officer in the fleet. Captain, we just received another message from the Villani, Linda said. The news is not good. Steve took the data pad and read the message. His face became serious. They've lost another world. Yes, sir. It makes 3 worlds completely destroyed. The Villani only have 4 left now, and their home world is under direct attack. Steve felt his stomach drop. When they had left Earth, the Villani had 5 worlds left. Now they only had 4. 24 billion people had died while Task Force Salvation traveled through space. How long do they think their home world can hold out? 2 months? Maybe 3? The Devourers are building something big in the outer part of their system. The Villani think it's a massive ship that will be able to crack their planet's core. Steve walked to the communications station. Put me through to the Villani Prime Minister. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, who had transferred from the Thunderbolt to the Valiant, worked at her controls. Channel open, Captain? The main screen flickered, and then showed the image of an alien. Prime Minister Zaravel was tall and thin with skin that looked like it was made of crystal. Her eyes were large and blue, and they showed great sadness. She was beautiful in a way that was completely different from humans, but her emotions were easy to understand. Captain Turner, Zaravel said. Her voice was musical and soft. Thank you for staying in contact with us. Your messages give us hope, Prime Minister. I'm sorry about the loss of your third world. We're coming as fast as we can. Zaravel's crystal features seemed to dim. 3 billion of our people lived on that world. They were artists and writers and teachers. The Devourers took them all and turned them into building materials for more ships. Steve felt angry. The Devourers were not just killing people. They were destroying entire civilizations and using the remains to make themselves stronger. Tell me more about these Devourers. What exactly are they? We've been studying them for 3 years now. They are not alive like we are, but they are not machines either. They are something in between. Each ship has a central brain that controls thousands of smaller parts. They eat metal and stone and living things, and they use everything to grow bigger. Linda Wright leaned forward. Prime Minister, do they have any weaknesses? Zarvel looked hopeful for the first time. Yes. We have discovered that they cannot adapt to more than one type of attack at the same time. If you hit them with different weapons very quickly, they become confused. Also, they have central brains that control each ship. If you can destroy the brain, the whole ship dies. Steve nodded. This was useful information. Have you been able to destroy any of their ships? A few, but every ship we destroy gives them materials to build 2 more. That is why we are losing. We are not warriors, Captain Turner. We gave up. War 5,000 years ago after we almost destroyed ourselves fighting each other. Steve could hear the pain in her voice. The Villani had chosen to become peaceful, and now that choice was destroying them. What were you like before you gave up war? We were terrible. We had weapons that could destroy stars. We killed billions of our own people in wars that lasted for centuries. Finally, we decided that war was evil and we would never fight again. We destroyed all our weapons and became artists and scientists. Linda Wright asked, Do you still remember how to make those old weapons? Zarvel shook her head. We destroyed all the knowledge. We swore that we would never make instruments of death again. But now we are dying because we cannot defend ourselves. Steve felt sad for the Villani. They had tried to become better than what they were, and now they were being punished for it. Prime Minister, we're bringing weapons and soldiers. When we arrive, we'll teach you how to fight. Captain Turner, I must ask you something. Why are you helping us? We have nothing to offer you that is worth the risk you are taking. Steve thought about the question. It was the same question that Earth's leaders had argued about for days. Because you asked for help. Because you're good people who don't deserve to die. Because helping others is what makes us human. Zaravel's crystal features seemed to glow brighter. Your species is remarkable. In all our studies of the galaxy, we have never found people who would travel so far to help strangers. After the call ended, Steve walked through the ship to check on his crew. The Valiant was like a floating city with thousands of people living and working inside it. The journey was hard on everyone. They were farther from home than any human had ever been. Flying toward a war against enemies they had never seen. In the engineering section, Lieutenant Commander Tony Garcia was working on new weapons. Tony was a short man with dark hair and hands that were always dirty from working on machines. He had been an engineer for 12 years and could fix anything. How are the new weapons coming along? Steve asked. Tony looked up from his work. Pretty good, Captain. We've been studying the Villani data about the Devourers. These pulse weapons should be able to disrupt their central brains. The problem is getting close enough to use them. What do you mean? The Devourers have thick armor and powerful shields. We'll need to get our ships right next to them to make the weapons work. It means flying through all their defenses. Steve nodded. It was going to be a hard fight. Keep working on it. We'll need every advantage we can get. In the Marine section, Colonel Jack Murphy was training his soldiers. Jack was a big man with red hair and scars on his arms from old battles. He had been a Marine for 18 years and had never lost a fight. Colonel, how are the men doing? Jack looked serious. They're ready to fight, Captain, but they're nervous. We've been training to fight the Devourers, but we won't really know what they're like until we face them. Steve watched the Marines practice with their new weapons. They were the best soldiers humanity had, but they were about to face an enemy unlike anything they had ever fought. Dr. Kate Thompson was in the science section, studying samples of Devourer material that the Villani had sent. Kate was a thin woman with blonde hair and green eyes. She had been studying alien life for 10 years. Doctor, what have you learned about the Devourers? Kate looked up from her microscope. They're fascinating and terrifying at the same time. They're not really alive, but they're not dead either. They're like a disease that can think and plan and build things. Do you think we can beat them? I think we can hurt them. But Captain, they learn from every battle. They adapt to new weapons and new tactics. The longer we fight them, the stronger they become. Steve felt a chill run down his spine. The Devourers were not just powerful. They were smart, and they got stronger with every battle. How could anyone beat an enemy like that? As the months passed, the fleet continued its journey through space. Every few days they received new messages from the Villani. The news was always bad. More cities destroyed. More people killed. The Devour fleet was growing larger and more powerful. Steve spent his time planning the battle to come. He worked with Linda Wright to design new tactics. They studied every piece of information the Villani had sent. They practiced battle scenarios over and over again, but Steve knew that all their planning might not be enough. The Devourers had been winning for 3 years. They had destroyed 3 whole worlds and were about to destroy a 4th. What could one human fleet do against enemies that powerful? 2 weeks before they reached Kepler 442, Steve received a message that made his heart sink, and the Villani homeworld was under direct attack. Millions of Devourers' ships were in orbit around the planet, slowly eating away at its surface. How long can they hold out? Steve asked Linda Wright. Days, maybe a week. Captain, we might be too late. Steve looked out at the stars ahead of them. Somewhere in that direction, 30 billion people were waiting for rescue. They had been waiting for 6 months, watching their worlds die one by one. Now only their home world was left, and it was about to fall. Steve made a decision that would change everything. All ships, maximum speed, were going to arrive 3 days early. The fleet pushed their engines to the limit and raced toward Kepler 442. Behind them, they left a trail of energy that lit up the darkness of space. Ahead of them waited the greatest battle in human history. The war for the Villani was about to begin. Task Force Salvation dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and Captain Steve Turner felt his heart sink. The scene before them was worse than anything they had imagined. Hundreds of massive Devourer ships surrounded the Villani homeworld like a swarm of metal locusts. Each ship was the size of a small city, covered in spikes and teeth that moved like they were alive. "My God," whispered Commander Linda Wright, staring at the tactical display. "There are so many of them." Steve counted over 300 Devourer ships. Some were as big as mountains, slowly eating pieces of the planet's moon and using the materials to build new ships. Others were smaller and faster, darting around the planet like hungry sharks. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the largest ship," reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her communications station. 10 times bigger than anything else out there? Steve looked at the monster ship on the main screen. It was shaped like a giant mouth, with thousands of smaller mouths all over its surface. Those mouths were opening and closing, chewing up pieces of space rock and metal. "Get me a channel to the Villani," Steve ordered. The screen flickered, and Prime Minister Zaravel appeared. She looked terrible. Her crystal skin was cracked and dim, and her beautiful blue eyes were filled with tears. "Captain Turner, thank the stars you have arrived. But I fear you are too late. The Devourers have almost broken through our last defenses." Steve could see explosions in the background behind her. "Prime Minister, how many of your people are left?" 15 billion on the home world. The other planets are gone. Captain, they have built something terrible. Ship so large it can crack our planet's core and eat everything at once. Steve looked at the giant ship on his screen. That must be what she was talking about. How long before it attacks? Hours, maybe less. Our ships are trying to stop it, but we only have 30 vessels left. Steve felt anger burning in his chest. The Villani had started with hundreds of ships, and now they were down to 30. Billions of peaceful people were about to die because monsters wanted to eat their world. "Prime Minister, we're here now. Tell your ships to move away from the planet. We're going to fight the Devourers." Zarevel's eyes grew wide. "Captain, there are so many of them. Your fleet is brave, but you only have 18 ships. Don't worry about us. Just keep your people safe." Steve turned to Linda Wright. "Commander, battle stations. All ships attack formation." Alarms sounded throughout the Valiant as the crew prepared for battle. Steve had fought in space battles before, but never against enemies like this. The Devourers were not just ships. They were living nightmares that ate everything they touched. All ships. "This is Captain Turner. We came here to save the Villani, and that's exactly what we're going to do. These Devourers think they can eat whoever they want. Today they learn that humans fight back." The human fleet moved toward the swarm of Devourer ships. The EU's Valiant led the way, its massive guns already charging with energy. Behind it came the other battleships and cruisers, looking small and fragile compared to the enemy. The first shots came from the Devourers. Beams of red energy lanced out from their ships, trying to cut the human vessels in half. But the human ships were fast and their pilots were skilled. They dodged and weaved through the enemy fire, getting closer to their targets. "Fire all weapons," Steve ordered. The Valiant's guns opened up with a roar that shook the whole ship. Plasma bolts and railgun shells smashed into the nearest Devourer ship. The enemy vessel's armor cracked and pieces flew off into space, but then something amazing happened. The Devourer ship began to heal itself. The cracks in its armor closed up, and new pieces grew where the old ones had been destroyed. "Captain, it's regenerating," Linda Wright said with shock in her voice. Steve watched as the Devourer's ship became whole again. Dr. Kate Thompson had been right. These enemies could repair themselves and become stronger with each battle. "Switch to pulse weapons," Steve ordered. Target their central brains. The human ships changed tactics. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourer ships completely, they aimed for specific spots where the alien brains were located. The new pulse weapons sent waves of energy that scrambled the Devourer's control systems. It worked. And a pulse weapon hit a Devourer brain, the whole ship went dead. Stopped moving and attacking, floating in space like a dead whale. "That's it," Steve said with excitement. "All ships target their brains. Don't waste shots on their armor." The battle became fierce. Human ships darted in and out of the Devourer swarm, hitting the enemy brains with pulse weapons. But the Devourers fought back hard. Their weapons were powerful, and they had many more ships than the humans. The U Stormbreaker, commanded by Captain Lisa Chang, made a brave attack on 3 Devourer ships at once. Lisa was a small woman with black hair and fierce dark eyes. She had been a pilot for 20 years and was known for taking risks. "This is Stormbreaker," Lisa's voice came over the radio. "I'm going to try something crazy." Lisa flew her ship straight at the 3 Devourer vessels, firing different types of weapons at each one. Plasma bolts at the first ship, railgun shells at the second, and pulse beams at the third. The Devourers tried to adapt to her attacks, but they could not adapt to 3 different weapons at the same time. All 3 enemy ships began to spin and crash into each other. Their brains were confused by the different types of attacks, and they could not control their movements. "It works," Lisa shouted over the radio. "Hit them with different weapons at the same time? They can't adapt to everything at once." Steve smiled. Captain Chang had found the key to beating the Devourers. "All ships, coordinate your attacks. Use different weapons on each target." The human fleet began to work together in a way they had never done before. Each ship attacked the same Devourer vessel with a different type of weapon. The enemy ships could not adapt fast enough and began to die one by one. But the Devourers were learning too. The giant ship, the one that was going to crack the planet's core, began to move toward the human fleet. Its massive mouth opened, showing rows of metal teeth the size of buildings. "Captain, that thing is heading straight for us. Linda, right?" said Steve, looked at the monster ship approaching them. It was so big that the Valiant looked like a toy next to it. If it reached them, it would swallow their entire fleet. "Colonel Murphy, prepare for boarding action," Steve ordered. Colonel Jack Murphy's voice came over the ship's speakers. "Marines ready, Captain. But sir, boarding that thing would be suicide. Not if we do it right. We're going to fly straight into its mouth and attack its brain from the inside." The bridge was quiet for a moment. Everyone knew it was a crazy plan. Flying into the mouth of a giant monster was not something any human had ever tried before, but Steve knew it was their only chance. The giant ship was too big to kill from the outside. They had to attack it from within. "All ships cover our approach," Steve ordered. "Valiant is going in." The human fleet formed a protective wall around the Valiant as it flew toward the giant Devourer ship. Enemy fire lit up space around them, but the other ships took the hits too. "Protect their flagship." Steve watched the giant mouth getting bigger and bigger on the screen. He could see the metal teeth and the dark throat beyond. Somewhere, deep inside that monster, was a brain that controlled the whole ship. "Full speed ahead," Steve ordered. The Valiant flew straight into the mouth of the giant Devourer ship. The metal teeth tried to close on them, but the ship was too fast. They shot through the throat and into the dark spaces inside the monster. Inside of the Devourer's ship was like a nightmare. The walls moved and pulsed like they were alive. Strange lights flashed in the darkness, and the air was filled with the sound of grinding metal. "Colonel Murphy, take your Marines and find that brain," Steve ordered. Jack Murphy led his soldiers through the corridors of the alien ship. They fought past smaller Devourer creatures that tried to stop them. The Marines used their pulse weapons to clear the way, but it was slow and dangerous work. Finally, they found it. In the center of the ship was a huge crystal brain, pulsing with red light. It was the size of a building and covered in cables that connected it to the rest of the ship. "That's it," Jack said into his radio. "That's the brain. Destroy it," Steve ordered. The Marines opened fire with every weapon they had. Pulse beams and plasma bolts hit the crystal brain over and over again. Cracks appeared in its surface, and the red light began to flicker. With a sound like breaking glass, the brain shattered into a million pieces. The giant Devourer ship shuddered and went dead. Its mouth closed forever, and it began to drift in space like a dead mountain. "We did it," Jack shouted over the radio. "The monster is dead." But the battle was not over. There were still hundreds of Devourer ships around the planet, and they were angry. They began to attack the human fleet with everything they had. The fight continued for hours. Human ships were destroyed, and brave people died. But slowly, the Devourers began to lose. The humans had learned how to fight them, and the aliens could not adapt fast enough. As the last Devourer ship died, Steve looked out at the Volani home world. It was scarred and wounded, but it was still there. 15 billion people had been saved. Captain Amy Rodriguez said, "I'm receiving a message from Prime Minister Zaravo." 3 months after the Great Battle, Captain Steve Turner stood on the bridge of the U.S. Valiant, looking out at something that had never existed before. Around the Volani homeworld, human and alien ships worked together to build a new kind of space station. It was part human technology and part Volani science, creating something better than either species could make alone. The station was beautiful. Human metal and Volani crystal grew together like a living thing. Alien materials could heal themselves when damaged, while human engineering made everything stronger and more powerful. It was a symbol of what two different peoples could accomplish when they worked together. "Captain, we have a message from Admiral Hayes," said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her communications station. Steve smiled. Admiral Hayes had arrived 2 weeks ago with more ships and supplies. She had been so proud of what Task Force Salvation had accomplished that she decided to stay and help build the new alliance. "Put her through," Steve said. Admiral Hayes appeared. On the screen, she was standing in the command center of the news station, talking to a group of Volani scientists. Her silver hair was a little grayer than before, but her blue eyes were bright with excitement. "Steve, you need to see this. The Volani have been working on something amazing." "What is it, Admiral?" "They figured out how to mix their biotechnology with our weapons. The new ships we're building will be able to adapt and grow stronger, just like the Devourers did. But these ships will be controlled by people who want to help others, not destroy them." Steve felt excited. The Volani had always been good at making living things work with machines. Now they were using that skill to make better spaceships. "How long before the first ship is ready?" 2 months. "And Steve, we're not just building ships, we're building a fleet. The Volani have contacted other alien species, and they all want to join us." Steve raised his eyebrows. "Other species?" 5 different alien races have asked for help in the past month. Word has spread across the galaxy that there are people who will come to help when someone is in trouble. Everyone wants to be part of that. Steve thought about this. When they had first received the Volani distress call, they had just wanted to save one group of people. Now they were building something much bigger. They were creating a new kind of alliance, one based on helping others instead of conquering them. "Admiral, there's something I want to show you too," Steve said. "Commander Wright has been working with the Volani military experts. They've been teaching us about their old weapons, the ones they used before they became peaceful." Admiral Hayes looked interested. "I thought they destroyed all that knowledge." They did, but some of it survived in their historical records. The Villani have decided that sometimes you need to fight to protect peaceful people. They're learning to be warriors again, but good warriors who only fight to help others. An hour later, Steve was walking through the station with Commander Linda Wright and a Villani officer named Karyan. Karyan was tall and graceful like all Villani, but he wore the uniform of a soldier. He had volunteered to learn human military tactics and help train other Villani to fight. The hardest part, Karyan said in his musical voice, is learning to think like a warrior again. For 5,000 years, we have only thought about creating and building. We must learn to destroy things that threaten innocent people. Linda nodded. It's not easy, but sometimes the only way to protect good people is to fight bad people. They walked past a training room where human Marines were teaching Villani soldiers how to use pulse weapons. The aliens were quick learners, and their natural grace made them excellent fighters. But Steve could see the sadness in their eyes. They did not want to be warriors, but they knew they had to be. In another room, human engineers were working with Villani scientists to design new ships. The aliens had ideas that humans never would have thought of. While humans had practical skills that amazed the Villani, Dr. Kate Thompson was there, working with a group of Villani biotechnology experts. She looked up when Steve entered the room. "Captain, you have to see this," Kate said with excitement. "The Villani have shown us how to grow ship hulls that can repair themselves. If we take battle damage, the ship can heal itself in minutes." A Villani scientist named Velmora added, "And the humans have shown us how to make weapons that are much more powerful than anything we ever built. Together, we can create ships that are both strong and smart." Steve smiled. This was what he had hoped for. The two species were not just working together. They were becoming something new and better. Later that day, Steve met with Admiral Hayes and Prime Minister Zaravel in the station's main conference room. The alien leader looked much better than she had during the war. Her crystal skin was bright and healthy, and her blue eyes sparkled with hope. "Captain Turner, Admiral Hayes, I have news from across the galaxy," Zaravel said. 3 more species have sent distress calls. They have heard about what we accomplished here, and they want our help. Admiral Hayes leaned forward. "Of help do they need?" "The Zephyrians are being attacked by space pirates. The Corallians are dying from a plague that is destroying their coral cities. The Mentari are facing a civil war that threatens to destroy their entire civilization." Steve felt his heart beat faster. More people needed help. "How far away are they?" "The Zephyrians are closest, about 6 months' travel. The others are farther. But, Captain, we cannot help them all with just our 2 fleets." Admiral Hayes smiled. "We won't have to. Prime Minister, I have news from Earth. President Martinez has announced the formation of the Galactic Protection Alliance. Earth is sending 50 more ships and 20,000 more people." Zarvel's eyes grew wide. 50 ships? And that's just the beginning. The president said that helping the Villani was the most important thing humanity had ever done. To make sure we can help anyone who needs it. Steve felt proud of his species. Humans had always been good at fighting, but now they were learning to be good at helping. "What about the other species that want to join us?" "The Altarians are sending 10 ships. The Procyon are sending 20. Even the Centaurians, who have never left their home system, are building ships to help others." Steve looked out the window at the mixed fleet of ships surrounding the station. Human vessels flew next to alien ones, working together to build something that had never existed before. It was a navy dedicated to helping others, not conquering them. "There's something else," Admiral Hayes said. "Earth Fleet Command has a new mission for us. They want us to establish permanent bases in different parts of the galaxy. It's places where people can call for help and know that someone will come." Zaravel clapped her hands together. "Like beacons of hope in the darkness." "Exactly, Zaravel. The president wants you to be the first alien ambassador to Earth. He wants you to speak to the United Nations and help us plan how to help others." The Villani leader looked amazed. "Me? Speak to your world leaders? You're the one who first asked? For help? You're the one who started all of this. Who better to help us decide how to help others?" 6 months later, Steve stood on the bridge of a new ship, the UES Salvation. It was the first ship built with both human and Vellani technology, and it was beautiful. The hull was smooth and alive, able to heal itself when damaged. The weapons were powerful but precise, designed to protect rather than destroy. Around him, his crew was a mix of humans and Vellani. Commander Linda Wright was still his tactical officer, but now she worked with a Vellani named Corvell, who understood alien military tactics. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez shared her communication station with a Vellani who could speak dozens of alien languages. "Captain, we're receiving a distress call," Amy said. Steve smiled. "From who?" "The Andromedans. They're a peaceful species in the next galaxy. They're being attacked by something called the Void Swarm." Steve looked out at his fleet. The Salvation was the flagship of 30 ships, half human and half from other species. They had rescued the Zephyrians from pirates, cured the Corallian plague, and stopped the Mentari civil war. Each mission had brought new friends and new allies. "Set course for Andromeda," Steve ordered. "Maximum speed." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading for another galaxy where people needed help. Behind them, the Kepler 442 system was safe and peaceful. The Vellani had rebuilt their destroyed worlds and were creating art and music again. But now they also had ships and soldiers ready to help others. On Earth, President Martinez was speaking to the United Nations. "We have received over 500 distress calls from across the galaxy," he said. "Every one of them will be answered. Every person who asks for help will receive it. This is not just Earth's promise. This is the promise of the Galactic Protection Alliance." The audience cheered. Humans had found their purpose among the stars. They were not conquerors or explorers. They were protectors, guardians of those who could not protect themselves. In his office above the lunar shipyards, Admiral Hayes looked out at the hundreds of ships being built. Each one was designed to help others to cross the galaxy when someone cried for help. She thought about the first alien distress call that had started it all. The Vellani had asked for help, and humanity had answered. Now, whenever anyone in the galaxy was in trouble, they knew they could call for help.